Hello Chads. I'm coming up on a little milestone for this channel and I wanted to create something in honor of that. My first scripted video was published on October 10th, 2022, so almost 3 years ago, and it was made after a long time that I've been dreaming on building a YouTube channel. It took ages for me to muster up courage and to solve the technical issues and limitations. One of those limitations was that I didn't want to show my face on YouTube. So how was I going to do that? My first solution was this static little animation of a rooster head on a poster boy's body. As time progressed, I learned how to do some animations, settling for the longest time on this animated cow face on interchanging bodies. This is for those of you unfamiliar with the history of this channel. I don't want you to question your sanity when most of the videos are going to be me talking through a cow. On December 30th, I published a video revealing my face, and this was also the video that started my new passion, videos breaking down concepts. I hope there will be much more to come of that, but for now, let's check out the videos that I am most proud of. I hope you enjoy this little retrospection, and I'll see you in the chat.
Hi, I'm Vegan Postmortem. You know me as a YouTuber, but I'm also an ex-patron of Titi Milk, the world's first and only milk. Titi Milk started with a simple idea. Somebody saw a titi and asked himself, "Can I suck on this?" As it turns out, the answer is no. It's unsafe and kinda weird, but if you put it in a carton, I can. Here at Titi Milk, we make our milk the old-fashioned way, through artificial insemination. And we're certain our organic, shit-producing, family factory-farmed Titi Milk is the only milk you'll wanna drink for the rest of your life. Why? Because it's addictive, and because we keep telling you that you need it, for reasons. I mean, we put this stuff in everything and everywhere. Our milk is pulled with Titi Milks from all over the country, so you have no idea where it comes from, which leaves you wondering, is that mastitis I taste? Now let's take a look how Titi Milk is born. Not born exactly, made for the newborn, who is then unborn. If you make somebody born and then unborn them, do they even need milk? Now it's time to play some word games. Is Titi Milk real milk? Yes, it is. It's only real if it's the drink we monopolized the word for. And real means good. Got Titi? Who is paying for this? The taxpayers? Huh. This is a story of Mary Ellen Wilson, who was born in 1864 and was a heavily abused child. To be exact, this is a story of her court case and how it was the beginning of the child protection movement worldwide. But you know that I'm going to tie it into veganism somehow. In 1874, missionary Etta Wheeler took an interest in her 10-year-old neighbor and her condition. That neighbor was Mary Ellen. Miss Wheeler tried to use the existing laws to remove Mary Ellen from the custody of her abusive carers, but the New York City authorities were reluctant to intervene. Miss Wheeler's niece convinced her to contact Henry Bergh, founder of the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, by stating, "You are so troubled over that abused child, why not go to Mr. Bergh? She's a little animal, surely." Oh my god, no, she didn't compare a human to an animal, how dare she? That is outrageous. Everybody knows that no matter the circumstances, the comparison of humans to animals is absolutely not something you should do. Anyway,
Some accounts state that the comparison was made in court as well, and that the laws against animal cruelty at the time were used in court to remove Mary Ellen from the abusive house. But I think that that's revisionist. It's probably the fact that Henry Bergh had a bit of compassion for animals, and that meant that he also had some compassion for small defenseless humans, as if there was some kind of link there. As if compassion to one small defenseless creature probably means that you also have compassion to another small defenseless creature. Maybe? What do you think, ladies, gentlemen, and NBs? On April 10th, 1874, Mary Ellen went to court. Henry Bergh contacted some reporters, so we have detailed newspaper accounts that described Mary Ellen's appalling physical condition. When she was taken before Judge Lawrence, she was dressed in ragged clothing, was bruised all over her body, and had a gash over her left eye and on her cheek where Mary Connolly, Mary Ellen's adopting mother, had struck her with a pair of scissors. That day, Mary Ellen testified the following: "My father and mother are both dead. I don't know how old I am. I have no recollection of the time when I did not live with the Connollys. Mama has been in the habit of whipping and beating me almost every day. She used to whip me with a twisted whip, a raw hide. The whip always left a black and blue mark on my body. I have now the black and blue marks on my head, which were made by my mama, and also a cut on the left side of my forehead, which was made by a pair of scissors. She struck me with the scissors and cut me. I have no recollection of ever having been kissed by anyone. Have never been kissed by mama. I have never been taken to my mama's lap and caressed or petted. I never dared to speak to anybody because if I did, I would get whipped. I do not know for what I was whipped. Mama never said anything to me when she whipped me. I do not want to go back to live with mama because she beats me so. I have no recollection ever being on the street in my life." This is heartbreaking, and so lucky this victim of abuse that she can talk and finally got the opportunity to do so. In response to this testimony, Judge Lawrence removed the child from the custody of Mary Connolly, who was found guilty of felonious assault and was sentenced to 1 year of hard labor in the penitentiary. There are so many tangents I want to go on from this story. First of all, if compassion can move us from animals to children, I don't understand why it can't move us the other direction as well. We should look at our process in the domain of child protection and implement that on animals in our care as well, care being the operative word that needs to be defined better. Furthermore, the compassion should be emphasized and gone through based on traits of each species. That's the only way to derive actual best interest, which is what morality is, as far as I can be trusted with such a claim. Laws should be made with the animal's best interest in mind, or it's useless in protecting said animal. I'm looking at you, Animal Welfare Act. Which brings us to ASPCA. You thought I forgot about your welfareist ass, but no, I did not. ASPCA, self-proclaimed animal lives savers since 1866, but only certain animals. Because here's what they have to say about farmed animals. Pioneers of protection. In 1998, we successfully petitioned the US Food and Drug Administration to declare meat from downed animals adulterated, and in 2003 we supported the development of Humane Farm Animal Care, the first organization to establish standards accepted by the US Department of Agriculture and the International Organization for Standardization for Humane Treatment of Farm Animals from birth to slaughter. Animal lifesavers, right. As for our boy Henry Bergh, he started his journey by defending a horse from being beaten by a carriage driver, which I of course applaud. Google laughed at me when I asked if Henry Bergh was a vegetarian, which of course he wasn't. He just couldn't see animals suffering. Consuming animal suffering was just fine.
In all seriousness, I applaud him for being a true champion for animal welfare, which was innovative for that time. I just wish that the modern SPCA moved on and updated their mission to actually save the lives of all animals, like we need them to be as an organization with highly developed litigious abilities. Fight for animal rights, SPCA, not just welfare. The tiniest credit where credit is due. SPCA does have a plant-based diet guide on their site, buried pretty deeply, and by plant-based they mean reducitarian, of course. Please like, subscribe and share this video somewhere online if that's something that you are inspired to do. See you next time.
When it bleeds, it leads. It opens news cycles and blows up on the internet. When it bleeds, good people with kind hearts show outrage, looking away in agony when the blender button is pushed. Now, if only those kind hearts knew that fluffy creatures fall into a blender every single day so that the good people could eat this food they like, I don't believe they would press the button themselves. But I don't expect outrage either. Did you look away? By the end of this video, you might be compelled to stop eating in public. Here's why. This argument comes up often. Should we use mock products in public as vegans? The argument is that they look like animal products sufficiently to trick non-vegans into thinking that those are animal products, and thus perpetuating or encouraging the use of animal products and viewing animals as products. I understand this line of reasoning. I'm just unsure if there is a basis for it. And here is why. I don't think we should abolish mock products. Their resemblance to animal products will disconnect from that context as time goes on, as it did with other things already. For example, glues used to be animal-based and are no longer. Essentially, they are mock products of what used to be a glue, and it's a good thing that we got alternatives. Creating a mock product is an integral part of abolishing the actual harmful product, in my opinion. Vegans who use this argument that vegans shouldn't use mock products in public because they perpetuate animal use will actually give examples like faux leather and mock meats. But where do we draw the line? Plant milks are mock products that are gaining popularity with non-vegans as well, since, well, they taste good, and not 65% of the world are allergic to them. Meaning some people can be allergic to some plant milks, but nobody is allergic to bloody all of them, are they? Supposedly, drinking a plant milk in public straight from the carton is not in contention, because the labeling is clear and nobody is going to get it confused with cow milk, despite what the dairy industry claims. But what about stepping out into the world holding a cup of coffee with some foamy oat milk? There is no clear distinction unless you are very close and can smell the sweet smell of oats and know the difference from the terrible smell of heated cow milk. Should we then feel obliged to not drink coffee in public? What about a sandwich wrapped in paper that has any vegan feeling except mock products? It could be pure roasted veggies, and people could assume that this sandwich, like any sandwich they ever saw, is filled with animal products. In my opinion, in most cases, all vegan products will look indistinguishable from animal products, both because animal products are prevalent in society and because they don't look like the animals they came from. And what about a cotton sweater that to a non-textile expert might look like wool? That one is a true story. I have this really old cotton knitted sweater, but because it was washed many times, it lost a little bit of its shape, and some people did mistake it for wool. So unless we vow to only wear and eat things that have vegan written all over them, or eat only whole plant foods in public, I don't think this argument can withstand examples that aren't as prevalent as faux leather and a Beyond Burger.
And I don't think I find the Beyond Burger that much different from a cup of coffee. The accumulation of all these examples is so vast that it becomes pretty prohibitive to be vegan in a public sphere. And as I hope I make it clear in the next segment, I don't think it's needed. In order to argue about the public responses to mock products, I think we must split people into some groups. That's not the best solution. Every person has different reactions to things, but it's a bit more granular for our consideration of the population. First, we can separate people into those who notice things in their surroundings and those who don't. Those who don't notice won't notice our mock leather jacket and are irrelevant to this conversation. Those who do notice can be separated further into those who react and engage and those who don't. The latter are a mystery to us. We have no idea what they are thinking about. And as we are going to be just one person in a sea of persons who do use actual animal products, I don't know how our specific contribution assimilates into their thought process. I also don't see how us wearing cotton jackets instead would negate the perception of the ethics of animal products, and what are the differences in the mind of those who don't react or engage. I don't know if they'd point out to themselves that we are not wearing leather but a faux leather, and thus think that it's not okay to use animal products. So I think we can remain agnostic on their thought process and should just take them out of the equation. We don't know what they are thinking. Those who do react but engage in a way that doesn't allow dialogue, I personally would disregard them as well, because they seem to not be interested in being influenced by the outside input. So they are out of the equation, in my opinion, because we are looking for people that can be influenced by outside input. That's one of the parameters of the argument. Now we are left with those who react and engage. They probably can also be separated into those who engage with the knowledge that you are a vegan and thus don't wear animal products, and those who don't. The latter would say something like, "Nice jacket, where did you get it?" And you can engage back in a manner that makes it clear that what you are wearing is mock. Something like, "Thank you, this is for leather, I got it from this store." It's nice of them to have an option of non-leather items. Or you can be less awkward than I and actually engage like a real person. The ones who engage knowing that you are a vegan might just want to make you a hypocrite, and you can answer in a way that explains why you are not a hypocrite. This is faux leather, it didn't come from a sentient being. And then they might say something about it being plastic, and you can say that that applies to all plastics and it's an environmental issue, not a vegan one, or that leather is also incredibly destructive to the environment. The town of Kanpur in India is a great example. Or that it's not necessarily going to hurt animals, or do they all of a sudden care about animals? There is an array of answers you can give. I think we can say that we are agnostic on the thought process of most people, unless they express it, and then we can engage with them and make sure to provide them with information that will negate the perpetuation of the use of animals for products. In other words, let's go out into the world, disregarding in our considerations those who don't notice, don't care, or are unwilling to engage, and let's focus on those who we have a chance to interact and converse with. I think the opportunity to talk to someone outweighs the possible perpetuation of beliefs, as it's already possibly done anyway by the sea of people who use the actual animal products. So, should we, the vegans, avoid wearing faux leather or eating Beyond Burgers in public? I think that through the process of this video, I'm actually advocating for the opposite here. What do you think? The dairy industry is a creepy bestiality cult. Here's one more reason why. Not only do dairy farmers wank off bulls and feast cows for profit, not only do they indoctrinate their kids into doing the same thing, there is also this.
Have you ever gone to a state fair or livestock show and wondered why people show dairy cows? Have you been curious to learn how the judges place those cows the way he or she does? What do judges look for in these animals? Why do the herdsmen walk these animals slowly around in a circle like that? Well, today we're going to learn all about dairy judging to answer all of those questions. But before we learn the tips and tricks of dairy judging, let's learn about why we judge dairy cattle in the first place and why farmers work so hard to prep their animals for huge week-long shows like these.
These are dairy judging contests. Dairy judging is basically a skill farmers develop so that they can select and breed the cows who will give them the best yield for the least investment for the longest time, and I'll elaborate on that later. This brochure from the Holstein Foundation, one branch of many of this creepy bestiality code, describes dairy judging as such. Dairy judging is an activity that allows you to have fun while building dairy knowledge and developing other important skills such as public speaking, critical thinking, decision making, and self-confidence. This is what dairy cows are judged on in these competitions. 40% of the score is given to the udder, which to me is already creepy and bestiality adjacent, and we haven't even started yet. Here are some of the ways dairy judges are describing udders. More bloom to the udder, more veining of the udder, more udder texture, exhibits more bloom and capacity of the udder, more balance and symmetry to the udder, less quartering when viewed from the side, more youthful udder held tighter to the body wall, carries udder higher above the hocks, udder shows more balance from front to rear, udder carried higher off the ground, more distance between the hock and the udder floor, large, more capacious udder. And after this they go through every part of a cow, comparing to what a winning cow should look like. The judges compare the cow to the perfect dairy cow standard. Most of the criteria are based on whether or not the cow will better survive the abuse of being constantly impregnated and milked without becoming a downer early on. For instance, the udder height is valued for the fact that the teats are not touching the ground, reducing infections. But some of the criteria are just straight up beauty standards. Chad the Cow, a dairy researcher, claims that farmers choose tall, thin cows based on the judging, but in his opinion, shorter, rounder cows are more likely to get pregnant. Creepy bestiality impregnating cult. Slight tangent. Chad the Cow, yes, that's his actual name, traced the genetic makeup of modern Holstein dairy cows to only 2 bulls and about 50 cows, which means that the dairy industry, specifically in the US, has been very heavily inbreeding these animals. And guess what this dairy judging practice encourages? More inbreeding. And why is that bad? Well, for starters, as far as I understand, heavily inbred animals have a higher chance of their recessive genes to be expressed, increasing the likelihood of genetic disease. Heavy inbreeding also affects fertility rates. Holstein fertility has dropped significantly since the 1960s. Pregnancy rates in the 60s were 35 to 40%, but by the year 2000 had dropped to 24%. Which probably might decrease the farmer's profit at some point, which I don't give a shit about as far as the farmers go, but I do care about how many times the cow gets molested for this process through invasive heat checks and artificial insemination, and what happens to the cows with the reduced fertility. Another quick tangent, a tangent within a tangent. I want to expose you to one more example of why the dairy industry is a creepy bestiality cult. In order to impregnate cows, they need to be in heat. and the farmers need to observe and check the cow's heat status in various ways. I'm gonna post 2 of those ways, and you can read it for yourself. I don't want my voice to be associated with your reactions to this. Let's continue with the dairy cow judging. 15% of the score is given for the frame of the cow, which is her skeletal parts, with the exception of feet and legs. The judgment of frame includes the head. And what the fuck is a feminine head? Yeah. Dairy cows are described as feminine. Here's what they mean by that. Femininity is desired in the dairy cow. A feminine cow will be sharp and clean-fronted, with a lean neck and long, smooth muscling. And there is a little drawing of a desirable feminine cow and an undesirable butch thick cow. Femininity in the cow is also related to the category dairy character, which is given 20% of the final score. Apparently, dairy character is an indication that the cow converts feed into milk rather than body into flesh. Here's how it's described in this handbook. Dairy character is signified by the freeness of flesh, sharpness of the withers, incurving, flat thighs set wide apart, loose and pliable skin, long, lean, smooth blending neck, clean-cut throat, dewlap, a brisket, wide, flat and well-spaced ribs, and deep and refined flanks. This description has erotica vibes, a creepy, outdated, super objectifying erotica. And in this judging handbook released by the University of Minnesota, major consideration is given to general openness and angularity while maintaining strength, flatness of bone, and freedom from coarseness. Consideration is given to stage of lactation. So to me, this resembles the beauty competitions for women, which are creepy and weird, but these standards for cows are even creepier. Like in the case of human women, the purpose of these competitions was to find a sexy woman. What is the purpose in the case of dairy cows? Describing them as feminine, measuring them, touching them, feeling every part of their bodies. But this is totally different, of course. The primary function of the dairy cow is the economical production of milk, so this creepy terminology is totally just to measure productivity. There are 2 more categories and they have creepy bestiality vibes as well, but it's time to wrap this up. Before I go, there is one more creepy culty aspect to this. These judging contests are basically an indoctrination tool for the industry. According to the 4-H contest rules, their judging competitions are for kids, the minimum age being 8 and the maximum 19. There are small awards and big plaques, but I wonder what the cow's prize is. More impregnation, separation, milking and mastitis? Gotcha. So altogether, I think I made a pretty convincing case for why the dairy industry is a creepy bestiality cult. Please subscribe, like, share. See you next time.
On this channel we like to play games, and this one is extra fun. Imagine you are offered 2 pills, but both of them are red, and they're not pills but plates of unidentified meat on them. You have to eat at least one, but you can eat both. You don't know what type of meat is on what side. What you do know is that on one side it's either dog or human meat, and on the other side it's either cow or deer meat. Now, tell me how likely you are to eat the meat you actually want to eat. For example, if you only want to eat either cow or dog, your chances are at 50%. But if you only want to eat deer meat, your chances are at 25%. What will it be? In our society, as a consensus, there is a certain order of things. It's passed through generations as if it's agreed upon globally. It goes like this. Humankind is on top of the food chain.
if you ask a typical human top of every chain. After humankind comes animals, and after that there are objects. Human, animal, object. This hierarchy seems to be set in stone, at least when presented with a clear moral question. There is the famous burning building. A human, a dog, and a phone are about to die. Which one do you save? Human, right? Well, congratulations, you just saved Hitler. That raises a new moral question. What if there are two humans in that eternally burning building? Then you can't get away with keeping them anonymous and lacking character. In order to save the right one, we need to know who's with us and who's with them. You see, us are more important than them. That's the quick summary of the dehumanization process. You can stop watching now, I guess. Or stick around, there's a little more to it. The more is at stake, the gap between us and them grows wider and wider. For instance, what if there is no burning building? What if you have two people in front of you and you have to decide which one you're going to shoot? But now I'm talking about wars and nations, when actually dehumanization is something all of us are doing all the time. While shopping, if getting a traffic ticket, in online interactions with some humans and some bots. That last one is especially confusing. How do you know the difference? In fact, I was a subject to a subtle dehumanization a few months back, when my arguments were dismissed by claiming that I'm just an animated cow. And those who claimed this should count their lucky stars that I'm not rolling the clips. So what might we mean when we say this word? There are three situations that can be described as dehumanization. Mechanization, a literal removal of humans from a process and being replaced by mechanical processes. Brutalization, an altering of one's mind through brainwashing or mind programming. Or animalization or objectification, which corresponds with the hierarchy, which we are definitely on top of. It's the third one that is really interesting psychologically and is relevant to our discussion here. And let's face it, this is the way most of us use the word anyways. This is the process that allows us to dismiss each other, among other things. This is why I'm more of an asshole on Twitter than I am in real life. This process functions in an interesting way. Quote, "This is a fundamentally metaphorical word with a psychological act that often has tangible consequences." I love this explanation so much because it helps us avoid playing stupid word games. This type of dehumanization is not literal, it's not a physical act. It's a thought process of one group about another group. Dehumanization is considered to be this rare thing only Hitlers and Stalins do, but it's actually mundane and common. One theory of this everyday low-key dehumanization is called infrahumanization, which was coined by Jacques-Philippe Leyens et al. This theory states that one of the reasons we do this to each other is when there is a need to praise the group we are in, the in-group, paired with the need to devalue the out-group. And we aren't even aware that we are doing it. But once I read this, I started seeing it everywhere. It's also posited that when we dehumanize the out-group, we reduce, again, in our minds, the possibility that the others can experience secondary emotions. These are considered to be more complex and therefore exclusively human emotions. And these are the emotions that follow the primary basic ones. In this article on the subject, they give the example. If the primary emotion is anger and the secondary emotion is guilt, then the primary anger is turned inward. If you grew up in a different country, neighborhood, house, a different secondary emotion would turn the anger elsewhere. All this to say that when we dehumanize members of the outgroup, we dismiss the possibility that they can have the same complex emotional reactions as we do. Therefore, they are less human than us. So dehumanization is a process that goes on in our minds, where we stop thinking that they function similar to us. But why? Well, one of the reasons is that we have a perception that we, humans, are moral creatures, and whoever undermines this perception might trigger this process in our minds. Quote, we stop perceiving others as having the same feelings, thoughts, and processes as we have, and thus stripping others of human qualities we might share. I've been thinking about this for a while. I think that dehumanization is basically the thought process of coping with a category error. The category error is humankind is categorized as moral. And when humankind doesn't meet this criterion, well, they are not human then, are they? The cope is, if they are non-human, they don't think or feel emotions like us. Therefore, they can be easily dismissed. We basically just make shit up about them and act as if it's true. Sounds like prime copium to me, the Twitter troll variety. And if I'm not wrong, and a category error is the root of the matter, then guess what? In the same way that dehumanization has several definitions, so does the word deanimalization. Forgive me for the poor source, the word is rarely used. I think in one instance it's the removal of animalness. I'm doing this right now, I'm deanimalizing myself. Butchering is another form of this, where the dead animal is separated and grinded into products, no longer resembling the creature it once was. In another instance, it's a physical removal of animals from a space where animals hang out, I guess. This paper does something interesting with the word. The term deanimalization is used to point out how farming practices are putting animals in environments that don't allow them to express their animalistic traits. This is closer to what I'm talking about, but not quite there yet. And I'm probably not the first one to think of this word in this way. I'm thinking of using it similarly to the definition of dehumanization that we previously explored, as a fundamentally metaphorical word for a psychological act that often has tangible consequences. The animalization that I'm proposing here is a thought process that happens because we have a motivation for some animals to be lesser or not animal-like. In other words, this is us making stuff up about them because we need to praise humankind and devalue certain animals. Imagine the next conversation. Some of you don't have to imagine it. You had this exact conversation many times. Imagine asking a dog lover if they would eat dog meat. In most cases, the answer would be no. And what is the difference between a dog and a cow that makes it okay to eat beef but not dog? We've been raising dogs to be companions and cows to be food, is often the answer. Some would go as far as to say that dogs can experience human-like emotions and cows cannot. But those are imposed categories and they tell us nothing about whether or not cows have the same traits as dogs do. The building is not burning. We don't have to save one and let the other die. So what's going on? Well, to me it seems that societally most animal lovers attribute animalness to dogs and a handful of other animals, but downgrade cows from animal status to object status at worst, categorizing them only by the product they end up being. or at least a lesser animal, a sub-animal. I must admit, though, it could be just that we should keep dogs and cows in different categories, and that the animal category is too wide to house all species in it. But I'm pretty convinced that these two animals belong in either the same category or two separate but equal categories. And I could at this point talk for hours about the stream of papers where cows are easily trained, shown to be intelligent, shown to have wants, needs, emotions. None of these papers were written by militant vegans. Almost all of them are from animal agriculture academia. And some of these make me wonder if we should grant both cows and dogs and other farmed animals actual humanness. But at the least, cows should have the status of dogs, based on their actual traits, if we are willing to put aside our copying for a second. But it gets a little worse. The animalization status of farmed animals is our fault in more ways than one. Firstly, when we talk about secondary emotions, we should acknowledge that people raised in different countries will have different responses to their basic emotions. Same goes for people raised in the same country but different households and so on. So which secondary emotions we feel are going to be dependent on socialization. But what would happen to humans who were raised by no one? Like in the case of Romanian orphans who were isolated almost without a caregiver or socialization with adults. They never developed properly emotionally and physically. Maybe farmed animals being perceived to not have secondary emotions is the product of them being isolated from an early age, deprived of social circles, having only other animal toddlers to keep them company. Maybe that's the actual difference between a dog who is considered to be part of the family and a chicken who was caged right after birth. Maybe. And maybe it's all in our heads. Most of the literature on comparison of human and animal emotions is on humans attributing emotions to animals. This is us judging their ability to feel. We are the arbiters of the separation between these categories. It's not real. It's a category error. It's just a cope. Since November 10, 2022, US news outlets have been breaking the story of slaughterhouses hiring teens as young as 13 working night shifts as a cleaning crew. The kids were cleaning dangerous equipment, getting hurt by caustic cleaning chemicals, and possibly being trafficked. Jesus! But nobody is talking about this. For 2 day shifts, those places slaughter up to 1,000 animals a day. For 16 hours, flesh falls on the floor and gets stuck in blades, blood pools everywhere, stomach acids, colonic content. All of these are a potential biohazard. Bacteria growing and putrefying in a constantly moist environment. It's dangerous to interact with, for kids or adults. I don't know how else to say it. Slaughterhouses are petri dishes, and if you eat meat, this should give you pause. We've heard about the circle of life, but what about the life cycle of a product? So, life cycle assessment is this tool that companies hire specialists to do for their product to examine its full environmental impact from its very beginning to its inevitable end. This is a more educated way to examine a product's footprint than just looking at one trait it has with no context. But here we're going to use this environmental analysis a little differently. More on that later. First, I want to give you a little background on what life cycle assessment is.
When examining a product, these specialists first map out the actual life cycle, starting with raw material extraction, manufacturing and processing, transportation, usage and retail, and ending on waste disposal. This product life cycle is very grimly named from cradle to grave. For each stage in the life cycle, inputs and outputs are measured. This includes water, energy, and materials as inputs, and pollution usually as outputs, meaning CO2 equivalent gases, water-soluble chemicals, and so on. Each stage gets this treatment separately to get a full picture, and the results might be surprising. For instance, a single-use plastic cup might be more environmentally friendly than a porcelain mug because of the incredibly high energy expenditure to fire the clay and its relatively brittle nature. Many years ago, I was taking an environmental class, and my teacher said that when considering the life cycle of a plastic cup versus a porcelain mug, we need to use the mug 6,000 times to justify the energy expenditure. A similar situation happens when considering single-use paper products. When doing an in-depth analysis, we might find out that single-use plastic might just win out, because paper products require more energy to produce the raw materials, more energy to manufacture, the products are heavier, less structurally sound, and therefore bulkier in comparison to plastic products, so they might take more space in transportation, requiring more transportation per unit, taking up more space on shelves and storage. That's an environmental issue as well. And yes, it's possible to recycle paper, but the water and energy expenditure is immense in the recycling process alone. When considering the entire life cycle, the biodegradability of paper might not save it from having a larger environmental footprint. This is all a tangent. I haven't even started explaining what the actual point of this video is. This was a recurrent theme while writing the script. Get to it, VPM. When examining the entire life cycle, it becomes clear that at every stage the product is a different thing. The constituents of the product might be similar or even the same, but the shape, the traits, the context, all those are very different. The product is a different thing with different traits. It's not the same thing throughout its life. The first stage of a paper cup cycle is a tree. A tree is not yet a paper cup. We could do some mental gymnastics and find a tree that secretes some kind of liquid, or a tree that has big curly leaves that can catch rainwater or something. I hate those definition bending exercises, by the way. But what would be the point of it in this case? We are not trying to see if a tree can perform some functions of a cup. We're trying to see if a tree has all the properties of a cup, and it doesn't. Neither the most evident traits like shape and living status, nor the more deep ones like purpose and function. A tree and a cup are two different things. And to become a cup, the tree needs to have processes done to it. It's cut down, mulched, soaked, dried, mulched again probably, chemically treated, soaked some more, blah blah blah, resulting in a thin paper coated with a thin layer of plastic, cut into a shape and glued. This takes time, energy, inputs, and has outputs, which are less important to my point, to which I'm definitely going to get to, maybe. Whether the tree is part of the life cycle of a paper cup or not, it has a life cycle on its own. The processes are less intervening and man-made, but the tree's journey starts with a seed, and the seed is not a tree. It doesn't have the properties of the tree, not yet. There's a temporal component accompanied by processes. Therefore, these two things should be viewed as different things within a life cycle, not completely separate. But treating a seed as if it was a tree would be coming from a confused place. Treating a seed for what it might become one day is misguided. It has different properties and needs,
and thus should be treated for what it is now at this time. It's almost a case of mistaken identity to act as if a seed and a tree are the same thing, right? Mammals also have life cycles. Fertilized egg, several stages of fetus, newborn baby, a mishmash of difficult to separate stages of childhood and pre-adulthood, and then adulthood, old age, and death. The cycle continues into stages of decomposition of a body, a theoretical stage these days due to burial traditions. But thinking of what happens to a mammal after death is part of the death inputs and outputs calculations, I think. The way the landfill stage of a paper cup would be relevant to its death stage. So everything and everybody goes through stages, and I think that they should be considered a different thing at every stage. Again, not completely different, they lead one to another, but all stages are not the same thing. I think it helps to think like this to realize that different stages have different properties. Otherwise, in some scenarios, we might smoosh that timeline to view a thing or a being as what it has the potential to be one day, or what it was once, or what it's even destined to be, and assign traits of a tree to a seed, or of an adult to a child. And I hope I don't need to spell out why that's problematic. My point is, people who refer to cows as tasty are highly confused. They see the cow as already a killed, butchered and prepared product, but the living, feeling, thinking cow in this video hasn't gotten there yet, and in cases of sanctuary cows, they are likely to never get there. It's almost delusional and singular, because they wouldn't confuse sperm, an earlier stage, or rotting flesh, a later stage, to be tasty the way steak is. I think, maybe. It's smooshing of a timeline and confusion of one stage with another in a life cycle of a being or a product. And, let's face it, farmed animals are in a product life cycle. This is where we are trying to liberate them from, because whenever sentient being is an ingredient of a product life cycle, they seem to not be considered as having their own life cycle. That said, we shouldn't forget the entire life cycle completely in our moral considerations. After all, life cycle assessment is an important tool that can be used to measure environmental footprint or even moral footprint. We can totally point out that this steak on somebody's plate is a product of an immoral act, when we know that it came from rights violations, as is true virtually in 99.99% of cases, approaching 100%. My point is that we just shouldn't assign properties to a different stage of life to the current stage. Flesh is no longer sentient. A sentient being is not yet a steak. I do hope my reasoning is clear. What you definitely must do is not confuse the like button of this video with the dead space under that button, and treat the like button the way it should be treated. It's there to be pushed. Subscribe and share while you are wandering around that area, and I'll see you next time.
Hey, this is what we're looking at today, a video by an honest farmer. It's a bit long, so we're going to take a look at 3 claims from this video, and I'll leave a link in the description for you to watch it. Let's begin.
Hey, a quick reminder, brand new cow, that's its mom right there. Quick reminder, it's really easy to portray taking the calf away from the mom as horrible.
Hold on there. We didn't see you taking the calf away. How do we know that this calf on your shoulder came from one of those cows? An honest person would make a video of that from the beginning, no? Especially since the next thing you say is...
by showing a cow mooing. It doesn't even have to be the mother. You just pan to that cow and she moos. See how it cries for days.
So, accusing somebody of editing the truth while potentially doing the same thing? Let's continue.
And, you know, I get that a lot of people in the comments will be like, well, I've seen it. I've seen when they separate the heifer or the calf from the cow and they bell her for days. You probably are watching a beef operation separate at weaning, and the calf is upset because it's no longer on the gravy train of getting free milk from its mother.
There. That's where upon first viewing of this video my jaw dropped to the ground. Did you catch it? Let's hear that again.
And the calf is upset because it's no longer on the gravy train of getting free milk from its mother.
The calf is upset because they're not getting the free milk anymore. Does this person think that the calf should be paying for milk or working for it somehow? Would this honest farmer say that about a human baby? To me, this is the bottom line of animal farming. The farmer sees cows as a profit machine. So even the simple concept of feeding babies in their mind is tied to money. This point needs to be made since at the end of the video, this is what they say.
So the next time you see a selectively edited video online, or somebody tells you, I've seen it happen. They cry for days. It's most likely a beef operation where the calf is being separated at weaning. And how dare farmers care for their animals in the best way they are able to.
How dare the farmers care for their animals the best way they are able to? What is that a response to? I have so many questions. For instance, according to this, beef is the bad industry that upsets cows. Or what happens to all those calves later in life? But I think this video shows exactly what kind of care farmers have for cows. The kind where a baby is a freeloader if they want to drink milk from their mom.
There is something that vegans don't want you to know. Every vegan you've ever met, all of them eat meat. Not only meat, they eat dog meat. Let me show you. This is a Twitter page of organic dog meat family farm called Delwoods. And the only people that order from this place are vegans. Allow me to demonstrate. Animal in the picture, obviously vegan. Another animal in the picture. We all know that only vegans put animals in their biopics. This person, plant-based dieter, that's code for vegan. Be raised by a loving family and humanely slaughtered just as nature intended. How sick is that? He's talking about dogs. It's also the difference between house dogs and meat dogs. Obviously delusional. Everybody knows that dogs are pets. Obviously a vegan and a woke person. And this person, obviously a vegan, and there's no need to read their tweet. As long as you're local to someone, then it's ethical. Good point. But we're talking about dogs. Obviously a vegan who is followed by many vegans. Guys, if this was happening in China, we would have needed to respect their culture. But this is happening in the United States. Let's take a look at another one. Doodle milk is milk. Retriever milk is milk. This is insane. Humans are not supposed to drink pug milk. And all of this is done for vegans. I'm telling you, vegans are the only clients Elwood Organic Dog Meat have. I am a fan of Australian Shepherd milk personally. Obviously a vegan. This person, again, with an animal in their profile. I'm vegan. Sickening. Cat milk is where it's at. How terrible is that? This is absolutely disgusting. Honestly, cow's milk tastes gross after drinking doodle milk for a few years. Everybody knows that humans are supposed to drink cow's milk and not dog milk. I'm telling you guys, everybody's vegan. Look, vegan, vegan. Not only vegan, but a vegan YouTuber. Incredible. So I hope you understand now that every vegan eats dog meat.
你觉得不残忍吗？
他叫我不杀就不杀，我叫他不吃饭他要吃，叫我不杀他就不杀，他有什么资格吗？
It seems like people are very much aware of the bad name that they're getting for eating dog, but they're very defensive and quite hostile towards us. On the other hand, they say that it's their right to eat dog because living conditions have got better in China. They're able to eat dog more and they're not forcing anyone else to eat them.
The butchery is bleak enough, but it's the downtown market where people are buying the freshest, locally sourced produce that really messes with your head.
Cow meat looks like human meat. I know, cause I've seen plenty of both. Some people love seeing one but feel sick at the sight of the other. Why? If the two disembodied pieces of meat were in front of you, how would you even discern which is which? Some flesh can be visually recognized, other can't. Some flesh is in its recognizable state, other isn't. That's why most people didn't even know they were eating horse meat. The labels help only a bit. Those are legal definitions, not intuitive ones. Meat is both carcass and offal. Beef might not even mean what you think it means. It's whatever stuff comes from somewhere on or in the cow. I'm not even assuming that companies lie. All most people need to eat without hesitation is omission. Don't ask, don't tell how the sausage is made, or it might put you off your dinner. Hello everybody! While we are patiently waiting for vegan gays to put the crop deaths video together, I want to address it from a different angle. For this video, I will acknowledge that animals die for plant foods. I'm even going to acknowledge that crop deaths, as they are called, are not accidental but are incidental. In this case, meaning they occur as a consequence of farmers, including plant farmers, just not caring about animal lives. Crop deaths, though, is an argument that's thrown at vegans as if it was a good one, and I'm going to take it very seriously. So yes, animals are killed for plant foods. Insects are poisoned by pesticides, and some mice lose their habitat during harvest and get eaten by predators, or even end up in the blades of combine harvesters. For this video, I'm going to assume all of that is correct, but I also want to point out all the incidental deaths in animal agriculture. I wanted to find a catchy name for it. The way crop deaths is a very catchy name, so I landed on corpse deaths. It's a little counterintuitive since corpse itself is dead, so it sounds like a tautology, but it's similar to crop deaths and it sounds catchy, so let's not read into it too much. I'm not gonna attempt to count how many corpse deaths there actually are. Somebody smarter than me can attempt to do that and maybe contact me to follow up. And it doesn't really matter since we don't have estimates for crop deaths in any meaningful way. All I want to do is show just how prevalent incidental deaths are in animal agriculture. So let's try to see all the ways animal agriculture causes incidental deaths, or corpse deaths. We of course can immediately exclude from this list all the animals that are raised and slaughtered for meat, as these are very intentional deaths and the reason these animals are bred for. I'm also going to be incredibly charitable with the intentions of animal agriculture industries. I know that every animal that is born into the industry today probably has a death date, but I want to match the corpse deaths argument as closely as possible to the crop deaths argument. And the argument goes like this: in order for vegans to have plant foods on their plates, some kind of invented number of animals had to die. I of course don't agree on principle. It's not an inherent trait of the plant food agriculture. So I decided charitably trade equalize foods like milk, eggs and honey to plant foods, not taking animal rights into consideration. That's because we are trying to separate between intentional deaths and incidental deaths, and I can imagine that milk, eggs and honey don't inherently have to result in deaths. Again, not taking animal rights into consideration. I think you might suspect where I'm going with this. let's begin. First on the list are dairy cows. These cows are bred and exploited for milk, and after they can no longer produce milk, they are slaughtered and become a first case of corpse deaths. In some countries, they become cheap burgers. In others, they are used for pet food, but we can call it incidental dairy deaths, as they were not bred for meat, but for milk, which, if again you don't consider animal rights for some reason, does not have to inherently include the slaughter of the cow. For the same reason dairy cows are corpse deaths, we can also add to the list the goats, sheep and camels that are bred and kept for milk, egg-laying chickens, ducks and ostriches, honeybees. All these animals are corpse deaths, and they technically don't have to die for the products they are kept for, but they do anyway. Next we have to add all the mothers and fathers of those animals, and the animals raised for meat, since they are not bred to be meat, but to give birth to all the animals, and once they can't do it anymore, they are slaughtered and again go into pet food or other type of food. Those are incidental deaths. They don't have to be killed, but they are. Next on the list are predators who are killed to protect farmed animals. These can be almost directly compared to crop deaths, and thus they become corpse deaths. Let's add to the list all the animals used for testing specifically for the animal agriculture. Some animals are used to evaluate contagions and infections of animal foods. For instance, mice are used to check if beef contains BSE, which is bovine spongiform encephalopathy. There is also testing for safety evaluation of veterinary drugs, testing of slaughter and pre-slaughter treatment of farmed animals, for instance to test stunning methods, cortisol levels during slaughter, resting before slaughter, feeding studies for best yield. All of those animals are corpse deaths. Some animals die before they reach slaughter weight and are discarded during birth, on the farm, in transit. Those are all corpse deaths. Some animals are killed immediately after being born because they are useless and won't make any money, like male chicks in the egg industry and male calves in dairy industry. All are killed in various ways and do not become human food. That means those are corpse deaths as well. Animals who are killed during disease outbreaks, like the recent bird flu outbreak in the UK, entire farms were killed without being viable for food, or every time there is a BSE scare, entire herds are being killed. Those are definitely corpse deaths. Pesticides are used to protect the feed stored on farms. All the mice and insects that are looking for food are dying from ingesting or breathing poison. But I gotta also give credit for keeping some species diverse and thriving on farms, like sheet flies and mosquitoes. So maybe that balances out. Let's also add to the list bycatch. These are unintended animal species that are caught in fishing nets during the mass fishing. Those are corpse deaths. And of course, last on my list is the thing that everybody has been screaming at the screen. Actual crop deaths are also corpse deaths, both from cutting down grass to feed to locked up animals and from cutting down grain, even if that grain wasn't grown specifically for animal agriculture industries. That's where it ended up, and I think those should count as corpse deaths. So to summarize, animal agriculture causes many intentional deaths, and on top of that, many incidental deaths. And also please remember how charitable I was toward animal agriculture, since I counted all of those deaths as incidental, despite the industries making actual money directly from the deaths of many of those on the list. Let's also remind everybody that vegans are trying to prevent animal rights violations, which are inherent in the intentional deaths and in most cases in the corpse deaths prior to them being dead. I probably forgot to add some corpse deaths to the list, or maybe I don't know about some of them, so please educate me in the comments. What are other corpse deaths that I haven't mentioned in the video? Also, please subscribe and hit the bell, tap the like button if you liked it. The other button also exists, wouldn't want to ignore its existence, and I'll see you next time.
Wow, this is gonna be so hard. I've been wanting to make this video for a while because it has been becoming clearer and clearer to people around me. I think mostly due to my new haircut. It just looks like a woke haircut that I had many times, but now it symbolizes my departure from the meat-eating lifestyle, clearly. It's become clear that I've been gradually going through some changes once overnight 8.5 years ago. This might be uncomfortable for some of you to hear, and I understand. Like, just the fact that I'm existing without eating animal products or using leather or going to zoos, it must be an uncomfortable truth for the meat eaters in my life. And if any of you want to tell me that I look sick or something, and that I'm deteriorating, or that I will start feeling the effects of ex-meat eating in 1 year from when you watch this video, I think you have the right to do so. But you should know how badly it reflects on your group, and that those are the exact comments that make ex-meat eaters hate you, you know? All I can do is ask for a little bit of kindness, despite knowing that some of you will react violently and start sending me death threats. No, not threats, actual death in the form of bacon and steak. I have already been experiencing this negative reaction to my lifestyle choices, as meat eaters just love posting pictures of the death of animals on my posts and presenting their kills to me in real life. But you have to realize that some people can't be meat eaters anymore. It's just bad for the well-being of animals, you know? And for a much less important reason, I found out that my body is just not built for this much cognitive dissonance. I know everybody's body is different, and most people can sustain their bodies with that much cognitive dissonance. But some of us just need logical consistency to sustain our bodies and not only survive, but thrive. I know meat eaters think that everybody can successfully ignore animal rights violations, but that's not the reality. Some of us are just built differently and can't breathe with our heads in the sand. If never thinking about it works for you, then that's fine. Not for the sentient animals, but for you it's fine. But some of us have been using copium for years to try to mitigate the blatant moral issues with the meat-eating lifestyle. And I can only speak for myself, but I just couldn't do it anymore. Anyway, my journey into thinking animals are not here for us is a personal journey. And it started a long time ago, when I went to a zoo and watched all the animals being depressed. Like I went into a little glass area in a gorilla prison. Back then I used to call it an enclosure. And the gorilla was sitting there not wanting to engage. I tapped the glass and she just attacked the glass. And that's when I first felt this pain. I'm pretty sure it originated in my conscience. I should have known right there and then that I was denial deficient and made the connection between this pain in my conscience that I was feeling and denial deficiency if I just realized that the entire lifestyle and mindset I had, thinking that animals are here for us, was not for me. Maybe I would have saved the animals impacted by that lifestyle, a lot of pain and death. But I was so delusional to think that animals are here for us that I stopped going to sad zoos but continued with my meat-eating lifestyle. And although that pain I felt stayed with me, I just didn't see the larger picture and got the denial I needed immediately after the zoo experience by going to McDonald's and ripping a burger with my canine teeth. But I guess the deficiency was building up, and nothing I said or did, like eating literally copious amounts of animal products or saying things like, if it's bad for us to eat animals, then why are they made out of meat? Nothing could slow down the growing denial deficiency. Fast forward many years into the future, I was still doing fine, almost never needing to top up my denial intake. But then one day, a friend who worked at a dairy farm gave me some fresh raw milk to try in my coffee. And all of a sudden it was clear to me how natural it is for my body to ask her if the cows were hurt while being milked. Thankfully, she was very accepting, one of the meat eaters who just live their lives not trying to force their morals on anybody. And she answered, not when they are milked, no. I didn't ask her anything else, but the question, wait, but when are they being hurt, started growing in my head and giving me more pain in my conscience. But I was so indoctrinated into my meat-eating lifestyle, it was so much part of my identity that I continued clinging to this idea that it's okay to not ask the question out loud. So from that day forward, I wasn't opposed to dairy or anything like that. I just let my conscience continue hurting, not even considering just stopping. Again, if only I was to just stop right there and introduce some courage into my way of life, I could have spared so many animals. Like, I remember when I was working in my friend's restaurant, I was standing in the middle of the kitchen eating chicken throats cooked in spicy cream, absolutely covered in sauce and juices, while saying that I love animals. And I didn't just mean dogs and cats, I truly meant all animals, while the flesh of an animal was getting stuck in my teeth. I was so blind to my own suffering in the conscience area that I freely and willingly participated in the suffering of animals whom I claimed to love so deeply. I should have listened to my body. It was screaming at me, "You psycho! That's a weird way to love somebody." But the denial was like a fog over my brain, like a brain fog. Then one day I was standing in the same kitchen, eating my favorite food, pork dumplings, and another worker came in to talk to me about the injured cat outside. And I was like, "What are you doing? You'll put me off my dinner." But she continued, and I was very distressed for the injured cat. And all of a sudden, it dawned on me, I'm a hypocrite. I profess loving animals. I feel really bad for injured animals, but here I am, eating the body of an animal who was killed for it. And it's not like everyone didn't tell me that other people's bodies need to kill animal bodies for this food I was eating, but all of a sudden it just clicked. Oh my god, it's so detrimental to the conscience in my body to be participating in all these rights violations of sentient animals. I moved the plate away from me, and that night I had my first ever real conversation with my conscience and been vegan ever since. And let me tell you, the results are amazing. I've cured my chronic cognitive dissonance. I no longer need to take copium and denial supplements. My conscience is doing so much better, and I'm just living my life, not paying for rights violations, trying to fix all the damage my unconscious consumption wreaked on the animals. Of course, I might never repair the result of this world being built on the notion that animals are here for us. For instance, I don't think I can avoid all animal deaths until everybody else also stop loving animals in a psychotic way and start loving them actually, but at least I take a firm stance against the violations of animal rights. Let that sink in.
Some of the animal rights activists advocate for animals to be granted rights as the logical extension of human rights, but I don't think that that's the right way to go about it. Wait, I don't mean that I disagree that animals should be granted rights. I don't mean that I disagree that animals should be granted rights. I mean that I don't think that rights granted to animals should be the extension of human rights. The following will sound like I'm disagreeing with semantics, but it's actually the anthropocentric perception and distinction of animals as the ones deserving of rights that I have a problem with. Please let me explain. For the purpose of this explanation, let's imagine we live in a world where nobody disputes that animals are sentient and plants are not. Wouldn't that be nice? I'm also going to talk about legal rights exclusively, since the concept of natural rights is ill-defined in my opinion. Sentience is crucial for granting rights, since the ability to feel and experience is what makes the concept of rights make sense. If a thing cannot feel, the notion of valuing their rights is weird. Imagine trying to give a cell phone the right to bodily autonomy, or the right of life to a plant. Give it another thought. Should a tree have the right to life for its own sake? If a tree can't feel or think about it, Does it care? The word care doesn't apply. How do you even put it into words that do? To have a right, to have anything as a right, I don't think that can be said about a plant. At this point, we know only of one group that has sentience, and that group is animals, including humans. Not all animals have sentience, but all sentient beings are animals. And if we arrange it in the Venn diagram, it would look like this. Everybody in the sentient circle gets rights, outside of it, don't. So actually, maybe animal rights is not the correct term, and it should be sentient-based rights. In addition, not all legal rights should be based on sentience alone. With higher cognitive abilities and the construction of society comes an additional need for legislation, which brings me back to the claim that animal rights should be an extension of human rights, which I imagine to look like this. I'm going to replace animal rights with sentient animal rights, and I don't see how we can call this an extension. I kinda understand intuitively that people mean that legally some of human rights should apply to all sentient beings, but logically we are actually looking at it backwards. We are talking about transferring human rights to animals, when sentient animal rights logically are the baseline for both animals and humans, and whatever legislation humans need is extra. Or maybe I'm just being pedantic. If I keep making these controversial videos that piss off vegans, my channel will never grow. I wrote a very long, very elaborate script with the veil of ignorance and various examples of granting rights, and then I came to the conclusion that all of that can be replaced with a few Venn diagrams. Please subscribe. Small creators like me rely on people like you to share our content. That's the only way more people discover what we do. So if you liked this short video, please consider grabbing the link and posting it wherever you hang out online. Thank you.
Hold on to your undies and stop trusting your farts. We're going to talk about dairy intolerance. The dairy industry has a huge problem. A lot of people don't feel good when they eat or drink their product. The solution? Not stopping producing this product. No! It's to fix the product. Would make sense if the product didn't come from terrible cruelty and rights violations. But the dairy industry doesn't give a fuck about those silly things. They care about making profit. Fix what you can, ignore what is unfixable seems to be the strategy. We as vegans can't tolerate the rights violations, but let's talk about what makes dairy so intolerable to the rest of the world. I'm calling it dairy intolerance and not lactose intolerance because there is potentially some controversy there. Potentially because all the research on the subject, at least that I could find, is done by researchers paid for by the dairy industry. That in itself is not an automatically disqualifying feature, but I sure wish I could find some science paid for not by people with direct interest. Just to make sure, you know? But we're gonna trust the findings here because it seems that this research was done with the goal to sell more milk, and the recommendations are to change the way products are produced. No, not by abandoning breeding, torture and killing of animals. Stop thinking like a vegan for a minute. Imagine we're walking a mile in the shoes of the dairy profiteers. Let's disregard the moral implications and think about selling more product. So what would one do if they have a system creating a product that makes a large amount of population feel sick? Well, first let's see what the problem is. According to this systematic review, 68% of us are lactose malabsorbing, meaning that our small intestines can't break down the lactose we eat. This number, 68%, was reached using the data collected from various lactose tolerance tests. But according to this paper, some propose to define lactose intolerance by the subjective measurements of appearance of symptoms. Not all lactose intolerant people experience bloating, diarrhea and gas after consuming dairy, this paper suggests. This paper also claims that all mammalian milks have lactose except sea lions. Guys, I found the perfect dairy industry solution. Let's start farming and milking sea lions. I wish I could shake my head. This systematic review claims that symptomatic lactose intolerance is much less widely spread. It proposes that the real culprit might be protein, not sugar. alert the carnivores. But yes, bovine A1 beta casein, one of casein variations, is supposed to be responsible for some of the symptoms of dairy intolerance. 80% of protein in cow's milk is casein, beta casein is 30% of that, A1 and A2 are dominant casein variations, the ratio of those two are depending on dairy cow breeds. Some are 1-to-1, others more, of whichever. The conclusion of this paper is going to be to breed cows with a higher A2 beta casein variant. By the way, casein content in human milk is only 3.5% and has only A2 variant in it. It could be that there's your problem, right there! The same paper claims that many who self-report lactose intolerance show no evidence of lactose malabsorption. So could it be that people just claim willy-nilly that they can't tolerate dairy and there are far less than 68% of lactose intolerance people? No! The paper that came up with the number 68% is a systematic literature review, and they excluded papers with findings based on self-reporting, among other things. Lol. So if the A1 beta casein theory is correct, A1 intolerance is going to be on top of the 68% number. Oh dear, oh dear. By the way, most of the data this A1 intolerance theory is based on is animal testing, which is probably worthless due to low translation from mouse to human, but all these animals had to die because of the dairy industry's desperate attempt to create a less allergenic milk. The A1 analysis I've been talking about so far is funded by A2 Milk Company, and the recommendation of the study is to breed cows who produce more A2 than A1 variant of beta casein. No one considered just stopping breeding cows. No, they're talking about breeding some cows more than others. Well, dairy industries in New Zealand are talking about it. American dairy farmers love to breed Holstein cows who are docile and give more milk, which is very high in this A1 beta casein variant. Can you see it? The greedy dairy farmers are going to bring their own demise once people who are actually intolerant stop drinking and eating this product. Anyway, I feel confident in saying that 68% or more are dairy intolerant, which by the way is different from milk allergy. That's a small but more seriously impacted 1.6 to 3% of people, and that shit is dangerous. So obviously we should put dairy in everything. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. See you next time.
Taste pleasure. The taste itself is a simple concept. There are 5 of them, and our taste buds have receptors for each. We might have the genetic proclivity to prefer one over the other, but our experience, culture, and nostalgia are big factors as well. The pleasure is actually in flavor, and that comes from not only how the food tastes, but also how it looks, smells, and feels. In other words, pleasure comes from our brain. As our taste buds get replaced every few days, we experience and make decisions. These we like, these we don't. But it's not as final as one might think. We can actually train our senses to like and prefer a food we don't like at the moment by exposing ourselves to it more. Our taste pleasure can be altered. All we need is motivation. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you the steps I take to create a logo. But to make it interesting, I'm going to use one of my clients who's, let's just say, a little bit controversial. I'm going to reveal who they are later in the video. But for now, let's just say the products they create and sell are things like cheese, bacon, eggs, and steak. This is something that is important to know for the next steps, because we might want to put the product in the logo itself, or when we do the competitor analysis, we need to know what industries to look at. So let's do just that. So of course my client has many competitors and they have some excellent logos. I looked on the internet for a specific type because I think for this client we are going to create a mascot logo because it's the most family-friendly logo, and I think in this case it's going to do a lot of work for the company. Because guys, my clients are a family farm and they really need a logo that is going to go with their vibes. So with that in mind, I usually separate the logos into groups and put them on some kind of a scale. In this case, the scale is friendliness, more friendly or less friendly, but it changes every time with every client. So for the most part, it's smiling animals. This is a very important thing to do with mascot logos, is to add some human features to them, because it really adds to relatedness of the logo, which is an important part. And I also really like from a client the way some of the logos like hold the product and present the product in the logo itself. I think this might be the way to go. So I usually go straight into sketching, and I do several sessions of sketching, at least one before I talk to my client and one or more after. As you can see, I prefer to sketch on a pile of papers in a corner, but some people like to sketch on a computer. Just, guys, find your own way to do this, because you need the type of sketching to work for you and not against you. This is just my preference. So I really feel like I went on a journey with this logo. I reversed the scale between the product and the animal, and as you can see, the bacon became a road into the desert or a magic carpet that the animal can ride on, and the egg is like a monolith or like a mummy to the animal. And the steak became, you remember that picture of workers sitting on a beam and eating their lunch? So I was thinking about that the animals can sit and eat the product on the beam, like a lunch break. Yeah, so I like this direction, but of course we'll need to see what my client thinks. And I also like to sleep on it, so I guess it's the end of day one, guys. Good morning, guys. I had a very surprising meeting this morning with Farmer M, and I showed her the sketches, and she really didn't like it. Look, my mouse is upset as well. But not everything is lost, and it's actually a good opportunity to kind of reassess where we are at. I showed her the competitor analysis and she really liked this logo, and she thinks her logo should be very similar to this, which is of course very important. When the client knows what they want, we need to give it to them. And also, yeah, I think it's a good way to represent the nostalgia and the hominess of the mascot logo. But before I go on into sketching session number 2, I think it's time for you to know who my client is. So please meet local, organic, family-owned farm Elwood Dog Meat.
For over 20 years, the tradition of providing wholesome dog meat to local families and beyond began with our step-uncle. His passion for a sustainable family farm was instilled in us. Taste and tradition, quality and friendly service is what our family has strived to offer our customers since 1981. Now with over 50 different dog meat and dairy products to choose from, you can find us at local grocery stores, farmers markets, or come visit us here at Elwood Farms to experience the amazing flavor of fresh, local dog meat. With our hands-on approach, we strive to produce high-quality dog products every day, from the way we care for our packs through to production and distribution. Great tasting dog is simple. We care. Elwood Dog Meat. We're a family farm.
So guys, now you can see why my client is not an ordinary client. They have a unique product, I think, and I'm gonna have fun creating this logo. So I think I'm going to concentrate on this specific look that my client wants and have this traditional vibe, nostalgic imaging and relatable elements. The happy animal holding the product she's helping to produce. So this is what I came up with. What do you think, guys? Well, I like it. I'm going to take a photo of it and import it into Illustrator and to develop it some more. Now, remember, this is very important. Not everything that is drawn on paper will automatically look good in this clean vector line that we're creating now. Also, the colors that we add are very important, and just have fun with it. Don't be too in love with your work, and don't be scared to basically renovate as you go. Beautiful. This is the final logo, guys. Well, it's not the final logo, it's just a mascot. We still need to add the name of the company and tweak the colors. But yeah, what do you think? Would you buy a product with this logo on it? Leave your impressions below, and I'll see you in the next one.
Previously on Vegan Postmortem.
Sentience is crucial for granting rights, since the ability to feel and experience is what makes the concept of rights make sense.
Chapter 1: Animal Slavery.
In this video, I'm going to point out the similarities between the African slave trade and the modern animal slavery. I want to be very clear. I think animal agriculture is animal slavery, which doesn't mean that I'm equating black people to farmed animals. But to be fair, even if I was, the equation is only problematic if you think black people not having rights is abhorrent, but animals not having rights is fine. If you think the way I do, that both are abhorrent, the insult of the supposed equation disappears. One thing that I can fully understand emotionally from my own history as a Jew, the tactic of calling the subjugated people in animal terms was done to degrade them and downgrade them from humanity. It seems that even generations later, it still works. We internalized these tactics and are implementing them ourselves. We think so little of animals that whenever what we do to them is done to people, it seems so barbaric, but we never look back at the animals whose treatment we use as the baseline for barbarity and reflect on it. But there is no need to equate black people to animals in order to say that animal agriculture is animal slavery. The two enslaved populations can be unequal and different, but both deserving of rights, and slavery is a word that describes the removal of such rights. Again, using my history as a Jew, I can empathize with some words feeling too grand to use in regards to anything else, but that's an emotional response that I had to let go. The history of my people is not diminished if the same words are used to describe the systematic extermination of Native Americans or Armenians or cows. I know that usually the word slavery is describing the violation of human rights, but that's why there is another word there. Animal slavery. It's the same way that we understand that butter is to be made from dairy, but if I add peanut or vegan in front of the word, I signal that it's similar but different.
Chapter 2: Property.
Slaves in Kansas. San Mago Journal, August 10th, 1855. The Missouri-Kansas legislature has passed the following law for the protection of slave property in Kansas. It will be seen that decoying slaves from their masters is a capital offense.
If any person shall entice, decoy, or carry away out of this territory any slave belonging to another, with intent to deprive the owner thereof of the services of such slave, or with intent to effect or produce the freedom of such slave, he shall be adjudged guilty of grand larceny, and on conviction thereof shall suffer death. Animals in the agriculture industry, and in fact in any relationship with humans, are considered property, and although there are some welfare rights, especially when it comes to pets, humans own animals. Animals are ours to hurt, to violate, and to kill, according to the law.
Chapter 3 Control.
Edwardsville Spectator, September 20th, 1823. If the slave marries, says Storch, it is because his master either wishes it or allows it. If he becomes a father, his children are born slaves like himself. His authority over his wife and children is subordinate to that which his master exercises over them. He is first a slave, and then a man. The control of reproductive rights is an integral part of profiting from the animal slave. In modern animal agriculture, this is the way to create new slaves in perpetuity. On farms, animals are segregated by sex so that they don't reproduce naturally. Their reproduction is scheduled, controlled, and executed in a horrific manner, and whether or not reproduction occurs is tied up in economic calculations.
Chapter 4 Prejudice.
Edwardsville Spectator, September 20th, 1823. A slave is one despoiled and robbed of all that the Declaration of Independence holds to be self-evident. The slaves are ignorant, barbarous, and unprincipled, and administer to the vices and pleasures of others is a consequence of their condition. It is alleged that they are the happiest people upon earth, and yet they are deemed as an inferior kind and denied a human or a thinking mind. Societally, we think very little of animals we farm. We call them stupid. We think they can't do basic natural things and need us to take care of them. We think there is nobody in there, that they don't have a mind or a want. We think and act as if they were a biological machine. We do this because we need them to be stupid and terrible in order for it to be okay. Only when we stop looking at them as commodities can we recognize how brilliant those animals actually are and how much we have in common.
Chapter 5 Welfare.
Reopening the slave trade. Sangamo Journal quoting the St. Louis Intelligencer, November 3rd, 1856. But the slave trade per se need not be so revolting an institution. If the slave trade were made, by the consent of nations, a legitimate branch of commerce, it is easy to see that it would be conducted with a view to economy and profit, and the highest humanity would ensure the largest profit. The horrors, disease, and death of the Middle Passage would give way to comfort, kindness, and protection of life and health. We indeed hear from the animal farmers that it is in their best economical interest to treat their slaves well. The proponents of animal welfare are pacified by this notion because supposedly if the slave is well fed and well treated, then the rights violations are justified. Commercially, it's absolutely absurd, of course, because if you view animals or people as the means of profit, then not taking care of them is more cost-effective, as we can see clearly from the existence and profitability of factory farms. And no matter the welfare, there is that pesky question of rights violations that can't be settled with a belly rub before slaughter.
Chapter 6 Tolerance.
The Dogma of No More Slave States. Sangamo Journal, September 17, 1858. The Washington Union says, even Horace Greeley admits that a properly constituted slave state cannot be refused admission into the Union, and this too in the face of the Philadelphia Platform of 1856. There is not a line or a syllable in the Philadelphia Platform against the admission of slave states into the Union. Never, at any time or in any place by categorical declaration or legitimate inference, has the Republican Party committed itself against the admission of slave states. Its platform of principles related to slavery in the territories, leaving the question of admitting slave states to be acted upon when it arises in the course of events, without commitment and pledges, one way or the other. Animal slavery abolitionists, known in society as vegans, are often accused of dogmatism and intolerance toward people who are the majority of almost every society and are consuming animal products. Maybe those accusations are right. Maybe us vegans are intolerant toward those we see clearly as owners and benefiters of slaves. The question is, why would we tolerate such a thing? Would you? For more post-mortem analysis, please subscribe and hit the bell. If you liked this video, please consider grabbing the link and posting it wherever you hang out online. Thank you for watching. On this channel, we like to tell stories and ask hard questions. Here's the story. In 2017, UK firefighters ran into a burning barn to save 18 piglets and 2 sows. 6 months later, appreciative farmers sent them a gift, sausage made from those piglets, and firefighters had a barbecue to celebrate. Now the question is, what do you think the firefighters risked their lives for? Was it animals, sausages, or money? Give me your honest answer. I'm about to dox myself. Are you ready for it? I work as a clinical research coordinator. Clinical meaning human. I don't want to gain credibility that I don't deserve. So to make it clear, I don't do research. I facilitate between people who have a disease that is being researched and the researchers. Part of my job is to be on the side of potential volunteers and protect their rights as much as I can, while also getting whichever research product to the researchers as efficiently as possible. Once in a while, ethical concerns will come up, and the primary investigator and I have to make a decision on whether something is ethical or how we can change workflow so we don't violate the rights of patients and other volunteers. If something is unclear to us, we have a higher ethical authority to which we not only have to answer to, but also can consult with, and that's the Ethics Committee, also known as the Institutional Review Board. The Ethics Committee has 2 distinct approaches to ethics, depending on who the study subject is. In the case of animal subjects, it's clear to me that the approach is welfarist. When they approve animal trials, they do it knowing that animals are going to be killed and probably made to suffer. Their worry is then turned into minimizing suffering, so the committee recognizes that they can suffer, but that knowledge translates into measures to reduce that suffering and not prevent it. The word exploitation might be used, but as an amoral statement of fact, not a moral consideration. I think they apply the definition of exploitation that is usually used for objects onto animals. And every animal will be killed. That's what the preclinical trials are for. Medical intervention and subsequent autopsy on beings that are deemed similar to humans but don't have the same rights in their eyes. Giving these animals any rights would be laughable in a situation that will for sure violate them. Researchers need to prove the utility of using these animals, and the utility is advancement of human knowledge and medical ability. So animals are the accepted means to that end according to the committee and the researchers. I want to be fair and say that where I am, there is an effort to minimize animal use in research. The researchers who do preclinical trials tell me that they need to justify every mouse for the purpose of their hypothesis. Frankly, I don't believe them that it's that hard to get approval for animal research as they cry that it is, but I can't know for sure because my job is in clinical research. As you can imagine, I also stay away from these monsters as much as I can. My suspicion is that they can no longer do whatever they want to however many animals, so they cry about that. I also want to mention that it's not the case in every country that preclinical trials go through the ethics committee. I don't know what the standards or limitations are in those countries, so I can't speak about it. On the other hand, when it comes to human subjects, rights are the epicenter of ethical consideration. Everybody signs a consent form, which acts like a contract and includes rights and duties of the volunteers. Most importantly, it will include a possibility to withdraw from the study at any stage. Whenever there is an intervention, some volunteers are compensated with an amount that was very well thought out to make sure that the volunteer is well compensated, but not motivated by money so much that it's harder for them to say no to participation. With other individuals, it would be unethical to give compensation because, for whatever reason, they have increased pressure to volunteer for financial reasons. The ethical considerations are endless, and never will the committee approve a study that has a strong probability of impairing or killing people. Obviously. I mean, it's obvious today. Clinical research has a bloody, racist, ableist, and altogether inhumane history that prompted the creation of these governing bodies in the first place. They aren't perfect, but they are there to have the people's best interest in mind. In some cases, the ethics committee will approve that obtaining informed consent is not needed. Some very, very specific cases, when there are no conflicts of interest between the research conducted and the human subject from whom some medical trash is produced, and consent cannot be obtained, or for another specific reason, it is deemed to have no ethical problem to collect that medical trash and do research on it. I repeat, very specific cases. The list of cases is also getting smaller and smaller with technological advancements. For instance, having somebody's DNA in storage might become a risk for someone's identity in the future, so every study with DNA in the subject must obtain consent at this point. But please notice this: the research committees are basically governing an abolition of bad clinical practices. When it became clear that the research field violates the rights of people, the result of it wasn't prohibiting clinical research altogether. The abolition wasn't of the clinical research, but of rights violations. Every abolitionist movement should consider this context and decide what they are proposing to abolish. I gave this example in my previous video, but it's worth reiterating. The abolition of slavery in America resulted in eventually giving former slaves full human rights. What it did not result in are prohibitions of giving former slaves jobs and salaries or asking them for a favor to move a table. What it did abolish is the violation of rights. And I want to make something incredibly clear again, since this is what is required of us here on the internet. Although we shouldn't simply abolish every interaction with every oppressed group, every interaction with anybody, frankly, should have the context of it very carefully inspected to make sure that no rights are violated and that no exploitation occurs. This requires careful consideration of someone's best interest and whether or not their interest is in danger. For that, specificity of details and examination of context are paramount. To provide an example from real life, I should tell you a bit more about my job. I facilitate the research on human blood and tissue. That's it. That's all I'm saying about it. Can you tell from what I said whether or not human rights were violated? Can you tell if these humans survive an interaction with me? Can you tell if I victimize people for a living? I think you can't. I left too much to speculate on. I wasn't specific. I didn't give context. And I'm not going to, just for fun. You can try to get the context from me through questions in the comments. If you care about obtaining the context and getting the truth, I'm sure this is going to go very well for me. See you next time. It's very clear to me that people who were in this particular cult are very kind-hearted. This destructive cult convinces parishioners that they are sacrificing their lives to save the world. For the past, let's say, 6 years, I've been obsessed with cults. I've been following YouTube channels that talk about cults. I've been slowly understanding the nuances of each individual cult, and I'm just addicted to everything cult related. I think initially I started watching ex-cult members' content because in the past I've been kinda naive and held weird views about certain things because I was told those things and for one reason or another I absorbed them. For instance, I don't even remember who told me that evolution is a hoax, because Darwin was a Nazi sympathizer, but I absorbed it and held that belief with no scrutiny, like into my 30s, I'm pretty sure. I had almost no interaction about it with anybody on the daily basis, so it was really easy to almost not care if I'm right or not. It's actually through the atheist and ex-cult member spaces that I started being exposed to the facts of evolution. One of my favorite cults to follow is Scientology. Frankly, I don't know exactly why it's my favorite cult, but I have my suspicions. More on that at the end. First, a little background. For those who are unfamiliar, Scientology was created by a dude named L. Ron Hubbard. L stands for Lafayette. He was a science fiction writer. In the 1950s, he wrote a book named Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, which later became the basis of this cult. Today, Scientology is known as a religion, but that's not where it started. This was supposed to be a technical guide on human psychology and how to reach a status of a perfect being. Since LRH was a petty officer in the US Navy during World War II, the Scientology's organization, called the Sea Org, resembles the military. In the past, they had Navy-like uniforms, and it's like a micro-society with its own strict rules, an internal justice system, and a unique language. The Sea Org provides its officers with food, water and shelter, and even gives them ranks. But the structure itself is kinda stupid. The procedures that all Sea Org members have to follow are counterproductive, dated, and accomplish absolutely nothing. It also runs a little like a business. A really bad business. Every post in the Sea Org has its own statistic, something they have to accomplish, and the statistic is tallied weekly and must improve from a previous week. Imagine if that was expected of us at work, always selling more, creating more, even if it's a holiday week. Even if there is no demand for what we are making, that would be silly. Anyway, LRH died at 1986 and David Miscavige took over, making himself chairman of the board, which is a made-up title. He also harassed the IRS to grant Scientology religious tax-exempt status, solidifying Scientology as a religion, at least in the eyes of everyone else who's not a Scientologist. Scientologists themselves still consider it to be a workable technology and not a religion. Many rights violations happen in this cult. I'll leave an excellent interview below if you want to know more, but for the purposes of this video I am going to expand on the following. There are 3 types of Scientologists. Public, meaning they live in the real world and pay for religious services provided by local organizations, which are operated by staff members, who also live in the real world, but on top of working a normal job, they also work for free for Scientology in order to receive services also for free, sometimes. Let's not get too deep into that. And the third kind of a Scientologist is a Sea Org member, someone who was recruited to become the clergy per se. Outside of actual personal variation, the experiences of those 3 types of Scientologists are pretty different. One thing all of them have in common is that they have restricted access to information. In case of a Sea Org member, the restriction is physical. They have no or limited access to the internet or the outside world. If they have phones or laptops, those are encrypted to block the descendants of Scientology. But most likely they have neither. But even if they did have access, they wouldn't go looking for anything contradicting their beliefs. And if they did that, they wouldn't believe it. Staff members and public Scientologists have it a little different. They don't have physical restrictions, they have mental ones. It's a self-indoctrinating cycle, but it's also encouraged by the cult itself. If they go online searching for anything, they then have to confess about it in a religious session, and that will cost them money. It might even lead to expulsion from Scientology, and that means that their family would disconnect from them, they might lose their job, their friends. Worse than that, what if the anti-Scientology information makes sense? They might have to change their minds, and that is also so scary. While being fascinated with cults, watching hundreds of hours of ex-cult members' content, and reading about it so much, I'm too often accused of being in a cult myself, which is a strange accusation to me. One of ways to immunize ourselves from joining a cult, or at least a destructive one, is by listening to and analyzing other cults. Furthermore, I spend a lot of time scrutinizing the arguments made for veganism, the characteristics of this group of people. I even went through the bite model one day, testing veganism, just to make sure. I can make a video about that. Let me know in the comments if you are interested to see that. Spoiler, it's not going to be 0 characteristics describing destructive cults. No group in existence can say they fit no characteristics of a cult. The conclusion I came to is that if I'm in a cult, all people I know also are. But I wanted to point out something specific today. The one thing that I find so objectionable in cults, the restriction of access to information, completely doesn't exist in veganism. In fact, the opposite is true. We seek information all the time, with some bias attached, for sure, but there is no restriction coming from the group. In fact, visual proof is out there. All we have to do is search. In my experience, some people will seek out and accept it, embracing the production footage as acceptable, but most people will avoid it, actively refusing to watch because it's scary. What if it's not something we would deem acceptable? What if we'll need to change our minds? What would our family and friends do if we change our minds? To be clear, I'm not making a claim that whoever is not vegan is therefore in a cult. This is just one aspect that doesn't apply to everybody in the group. I'm just making an observation as an outsider who was once in the group. I am an ex-meat eater. For most of my life, I had almost no interactions about it with anybody, so it was really easy to almost not care if I'm right to eat meat and other stuff or not. This would be a waste of a video if I didn't provide a search term for those who are willing to look. watchdominion.org is a start. The link is in the description. Before I go, I wanted to make one last observation. I think one of the main reasons that I like so much watching ex-Scientologists talking about their experiences is that it's very clear to me that people who were in this particular cult are very kind-hearted. This destructive cult convinces parishioners that they are sacrificing their lives to save the world. They are clearing the planet, they are told. And that's the only way to save everybody, they are told. I think their kindness was abused and corrupted in order to make them do pretty terrible things to each other and to their family members and others. But once these kind people leave the cult, their kindness and sincerity is so visible. I think this attracts other kind, sincere people who, when exposed to an injustice, want to do something about it. Thank you for watching. I hope this was interesting to some of you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching till the very end, and I'll see you next time. Titty milk. Most people were forced to try it at least once as a toddler. 68% of us can't digest it. But recently, the titty milk peddlers have ramped up their desperate attempts to make us drink and eat more of it. Just listen to these stories. I'm on the first date,
Everything is going well. I asked the waiter for a titty milk-free alternative, because I'm not a baby cow, but he brought me a cake that had dairy in it anyway. I shat myself right there, and my date just left. It happens more often than you think, me shitting myself. Why is there titty milk in everything? Poor guy. He'll be fine though. Dairy-free alternatives are more widespread than ever before. But it just goes to show how titty milk peddlers have no shame, even if it ruins the planet. So my daughter comes back from college and says that the dairy sector is one of the leading causes of climate change. I said that I don't use straws anymore and put my water bottles in recycling, but I keep drinking titty milk the way I was conditioned to do. Now my daughter keeps trying to talk to me about my hypocrisy and leaves pamphlets everywhere. I can't work, I can't sleep because of my cognitive dissonance. I feel bad for that mom, but you can't deny the facts, even if you really try. Let's talk about other mothers as well.
It was my turn to bring the snacks for my kids' baseball game. I brought chocolate-flavored titty milk. I mean, who doesn't love some titty milk, right? Apparently the moms. I didn't mean this mom. No, not this mom either. No, not these ones. I don't care about these moms or their kids. Can we please go back to talking about me and my petty problems?
Wow. I was running for city council until the local paper printed a picture of me forcefully artificially inseminating a cow during my 4-H teenage years. Everybody was shaming me for it, while they themselves drank titty milk. Anyway, I'm not in politics anymore. Now I just jerk off bulls for their sperm and sell it to dairy farmers. No, don't use any of that. We used all of it, because it's important. So next time you're about to drink titty milk, think of the shit-covered titty on a sick and suffering cow and her cute kids who were taken away from her and slaughtered. Don't they matter? If you're ready to admit that you are not a baby cow, go to challenge22.com. Together we can stop titty milk for good. If you feel bombarded by vegans constantly nagging you to stop eating the food you like because what we do to animals is wrong, because animals are feeling thinking beings that deserve basic rights, because what they go through is basically torture, blah blah blah. But what if those pesky vegans are right? What if animals can feel and experience life? What if it's like torturing and killing 4-legged babies? What if animals not having basic rights is as bad as people not having those rights? Think of what's at stake if vegans are right. Billions of thinking, feeling creatures tortured and killed for a food you like.